say that you have a responsibility to share what your constituents tell you, but don't you also have a responsibility to fact-check them first?
Well, I think the media has a responsibility to fact-check the residents of Springfield, not lie about them. I've got residents of Springfield who are coming to me with a dozen different problems. They've been talking about it for months or in some cases years. The American media totally ignored it until they showed up to fact-check what some people were saying about pets. So there's one story out there from multiple people, by the way. Multiple people have come to my office, have said on video, they talk about the pet story. And that's all the American media wants to talk about. And of course, the American media goes into Springfield, dives in, harasses everybody who dares to complain about the condition of the town. That is not journalism, and that's not seeking the truth. That is bullying on an industrial scale. And I think the media ought to be ashamed of itself.
So those comments are, about eating dogs and things are very hurtful. They're very hurtful for these men and women who work very, very hard. They're obviously very hurtful for their children.
They're hurtful, but are they also fueling these threats?
Well, look, as the mayor said today, Mayor Rue, he said, before this, we had Haitians here for 3 years, 4 years. And we did not have any of these.
If these comments that are baseless, that are being made by former President Trump and Senator Vance, if they were not being made, would those threats stop?
Well, I don't know. I can't predict what would happen, but the statements are wrong. I've said they were wrong. The mayor has said they were wrong, and frankly, they need to stop.
Yeah, so that's the Republican governor of Ohio. And we've heard it from the mayor. We've heard it from city officials. And again, as far as, the fire hose of falsehoods, where, and what autocrats do, where they just lie repeatedly and then they gaslight you. So you're supposed to get confused. It really didn't work. But at the end, J.D. Vance goes, oh, this is all the press wants to talk about. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should have done the fact-checking. The press did the fact-checking. And what the press found out is that these Republican officials are saying that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are liars. That's what they're saying. And why is the press talking about it? Because Donald Trump talked about it in the debate. Because Donald Trump talks about it in his speeches after the debate. Because Donald Trump said he's going to Springfield. And while Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are lying, and J.D. Vance is putting his own constituents' lives in danger, they just keep at it. J.D. Vance keeps at it. And again, here we have the gaslighting. Oh, they should be ashamed of themselves. So you have somebody lying, putting his own constituents' lives in danger, having his own constituent schools shut down because he keeps lying about this, having hospitals in his own state shut down and his constituents not able to use those hospitals because he keeps lying in the middle of a presidential campaign. And he says somebody else should be ashamed of themselves. That, my friend, is what the kids call gaslighting. Mika, how many bomb threats have there been?
Say 30 bomb threats, more than 30 bomb threats in the city since last week, including threats to elementary schools. Another thing that's doing, besides gaslighting, is threatening the media not to cover a story when a Republican nominee lies like a rug.
Well, and he keeps talking about this story.
Right.
He keeps talking.
So you don't want us to cover the fact that you are lying.
Yeah.
And making up stories that are endangering the lives of people. Okay, I get it.
And spreading these lies in a debate that 60 million plus people watched.
Right.
And then saying you're going to talk about it on the campaign trail, and then saying you're going to go up to Springfield. Anyway,
they have a network that will not say any of this, by the way, that won't even cover the story. So they've got their own amplification.
Well, it's the same thing with January the 6th, where they'll go, why are they talking about January 6th? It's much ado about nothing. Right. I've heard a lot of people say it was nothing. And yet Donald Trump keeps talking about January 6th. He keeps talking about his January 6th convict choir. Anyway,
Governor DeWine, the struggle.
Yeah, Governor DeWine yesterday sent dozens of state troopers to be stationed across the city schools for the foreseeable future. Again, all because of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's lies.
Joining us now, national correspondent for The Dispatch, Kevin Williamson, also with us, White House correspondent for Politico and co-author of The Playbook, Eugene Daniels. Good to have you both.
Kevin, your new piece is incredible. But then again, Kevin, all of your pieces are incredible. There is a line, though, a Southern state school like me, a guy like me that stuck out, where you wrote that you were surprised that a guy that was basically this smart, that has the education that he has, would resort to these lies when he knows better. And that's what, every time I look at members of my former party that went to, Yale and Harvard and Stanford, all these, so I'm saying, wait, they could be doing so much as a conservative. They could be helping this country so much as a conservative, and instead, they follow Donald Trump around and spread his lies.
Yeah, Donald Trump being a serial liar is not exactly new, so I don't think we have to probably dwell on that too much. J.D. Vance being a serial liar is a relatively new development, so maybe we should talk about that some. What's really interesting to me about this is that, J.D. Vance wrote this very famous book called Hillbilly Elegy, and the hillbillies who moved to Ohio to work in the factories were actually a lot like these Haitians. They came from one of the poorest places in the Western Hemisphere. The locals complained that they didn't understand the local culture, they didn't speak the language, they didn't fit in very well, even down to the urban legends about, the hillbillies living off a diet of possums and roadkill and things like that, and squirrels. So J.D., of all people, is someone who's well placed to understand the way in which these legends can really slander and libel and hurt a community. And the people on whose behalf he purports to speak right now have their schools closed down, they have their college closed down, they've had to cancel public events, a big annual cultural festival they have. It's going to cost their economy a lot. And as I note in the story, this is all about something that actually isn't happening. No one in Springfield seems to think it's happening. I didn't talk to one person who believed any of these stories. And what's even worse about this is that there are real issues related to immigration in Springfield. You've got a town of 50 to 60,000 people that's had 12 to 15,000 immigrants from a desperately poor country that is very culturally different from the United States move there. Of course, there are going to be issues associated with that. But rather than talking about the things that are actually going on in Springfield and the things that can be done to help to improve the situation for everybody, we're having this crazy conversation about, dogs and cats. And these guys have the temerity to complain about people calling them weird when they're obsessed with this weird cat eating story. And I have to imagine that someone who's not a political obsessive watching the debate, and then just Trump out of nowhere starts shouting about they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. That had to be a really weird moment for normal people.
Yeah. So, Kevin, in your new piece and entitled The Exotic Cat Eaters of Springfield, Ohio, a pretty long story about a thing that didn't happen. You write in part this. Springfield, like many similar cities, had been suffering from a declining population and economic stagnation when it joined a number of other Rust Belt cities in an effort to actively recruit immigrants to settle there. The town fathers may not have had 12,000 Haitians in mind, but that is what they got. And the results were pretty good. Contrary to the rhetoric you hear from Vance et al., unemployment went up, not down, and wages went up.
Employment went up.
Employment went up, and wages went up, too. The case against the Haitians isn't that they are welfare malingas or cat eaters, or even that they are illegal immigrants who came here thanks to Joe Biden's lax border enforcement, which most of them aren't. The real issue is that by working overtime and investing in the community, they have made life more challenging for a reliable Trump voting constituency. Marginally employed white people on the dole.
Yeah, and, Kevin, we often play Ronald Reagan's farewell speech to America on January 19th, 1989, where he talks about the importance of immigrants in the American story, the importance to us economically, culturally, spiritually. And it is so fascinating. Your story echoes that yes, this isn't neat. It's not clean. These people are here legally, but there are going to be some bumps along the way. And yet you could say that about the Irish, about the Germans, about the hillbillies, as you say, one wave after another that comes to America. They settle in, they create jobs, the economy grows, and as Ronald Reagan said, and America gets younger.
Yeah, in fact, they did say exactly the same things about the Irish, and maybe less so about the Germans, although if you look at some of the rhetoric in the 19th century with the German immigrants down there, yeah, some sort of similar stuff as well. Look, I understand that immigration can be disruptive. I'm from West Texas. You know, we're a border state, and our current border situation is a real mess. It's something that needs to be got hold of. This isn't defense of anyone's border policies or anything like that. But it's a matter of what we might quaintly biblically call bearing false witness against an entire population of very poor and vulnerable people. And J.D. Vance should know better than this. And it also, I don't think it actually even serves his interest. You know, they want to talk about the real issues there that are related to immigration, but you can't really have that conversation with everyone just shouting at each other about cat eaters. It's a bizarre time, but we live in bizarre times.
Kevin, good morning. I have to underline something that we reported and kind of moved past quickly, which is that there are Ohio State troopers standing outside of elementary schools in Springfield, Ohio this morning to protect little kindergartners with their backpacks. There are pictures of it. You can look, you can see the video because of what J.D. Vance and Donald Trump have been pushing, because of the threats that have come in because of that. So what is your sense of how this gets cooled off or how the temperature is ultimately turned down? Because, boy, it sure doesn't seem like Trump or Vance is backing away from this.
Sure. I think that after the election and the national attention goes away, that a lot of this stuff will stop. As I understand it, most of the bomb threats and stuff seem to be coming from outside of that community. So they will get back to doing what they've been trying to do for the last couple of years, which is to work toward ways to mitigate the effects of the real problems that they have there. You know, they've had to hire, for instance, a bunch of extra ESL instructors and interpreters for schools and also hospitals and things like that, because most of a lot of the Haitians don't speak English or don't speak English very well, and they need some help with that. Driving is a real issue. Apparently, you know, the Haitian driving culture is a little bit more casual in terms of its observation of the rules. And of course, there was this terrible accident a couple years ago in which a Haitian immigrant who was driving recklessly hit a school bus and killed a kid. So that's kind of what really began to bring some of this to the forefront. So they're going to work through some of those things. They're going to work in terms of, you know, cultural education, getting people to understand local norms better, and that sort of thing. And but it's probably important. It's important to remember that these Haitians are there working legally under temporary protected status. So they're not, you know, people who have just hopped over the border and are working off the books in some, you know, factory or farm somewhere. That's not what the situation is at all.
Yeah, and you know, Mika, it's important also to remember that there good people in Springfield don't want to be drawn into this. The father of the young boy who was tragically killed in that accident.
Yeah, so
actually
please
went before city council and said, do not try to use my son to spread hate.
And that was an accident.
That was
a terrible, tragic accident.
Said it was a terrible, tragic accident, but said, do not use my son's memory to spread hate. It is not who he was, and it's not who we should be.
So national correspondent at The Dispatch, Kevin Williamson, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin.